as I say, we'll work through the agenda that's in front of you now. That's the overview from the diocese with Ric, presentation from Sophie, a Q&A session for about 10 minutes, further presentation on the promotion of generosity and online giving, and then a final Q&A before we say goodbye. Just to make it clear as well that this webinar will be available. We're recording it, and it will be available as a resource on our diocesan YouTube channel and on the website, and we'd encourage as many people as possible to view it and to share it as widely as possible, because we really hope that it provides a beneficial resource and support for you. So we're up to 60, I think. At that point, I'll end the screen share, and hopefully everybody will see myself. My name is Dave Roberts. I'm the communications manager. Ric, who's head of finance, and Sophie, who's stewardship enabler. Ric, with no further ado, it's over to you for the Diocesan Overview.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Dave. I'm only going to take about 5 minutes, because in some ways the most interesting and most helpful stuff is what Sophie's going to be sharing with you. But we thought it would be helpful just to give you an update on how we're seeing things financially from the diocesan point of view, looking both at national church, diocesan level, and what we're picking up from the PCCs around the diocese. First of all, though, thanks ever so much for tuning in. It's over 60 of you. That's incredible. And although we're stuck in our spare rooms and not meeting together nearly as often, and we're not meeting in our churches, it doesn't mean that we're not thinking of you as treasurers and praying for you, and really conscious of what you and all of us are going through. So please be assured of our prayers and good wishes, and well done for everything you're doing, because it's not easy, is it? I'm just going to rattle through how things are looking from the diocesan side. As you know, something like 75% of our income comes in from the parish offer, and it doesn't take a genius to work out that because you at PCCs and churches are not getting a lot of your income coming in, then parish offer is under some pressure as well, obviously. So we're having to think that through. It's having a big impact on you now, because you're not getting your collections on your envelope income. You're probably not getting rental income, fundraising, summer events, etc. So your finances have hit a brick wall, almost certainly. Some of you will have reserves and you're okay for now. Some of you won't have much reserves and you're really going to be feeling under the cosh. We understand, we know that, and we're trying to work out how we can support you as best we can. We're also very conscious of what that's going to do in terms of as the pressure filters up the parish offer, how that's going to affect the diocese and our ability to fund everything we're trying to do. We've already noticed the impact here. Parish offer is holding up pretty well, and we're really grateful for that support. We've heard from quite a few of you, some saying we're okay for now, we'll keep paying it. Some saying actually we're already struggling, what can we do? We really value the contact from you to know how it's going, whether it's good news or bad news. We really do want to know, so do email us. Thank you for continuing to pay where you can. We're seeing impact on our investment income to a degree, and our rental income on the properties that we rent out. And so we will be drawing into our general reserves this year as a diocese, without doubt. Like you, we're probably trying to guess how much that's going to be at this stage. We're not quite sure. There's so much uncertainty still, isn't there? We're working hard to try and mitigate against that, as I hope you are in your church context. So we're looking for savings wherever that is possible. We are furloughing over half of the church house and diocesan staff, which is painful. It's hard. So those of us that are in our spare rooms working, we're having to work extra hard. But it's hard on those on furlough as well, so pray for them. But that is obviously making some savings for us. There is a temporary freeze on external recruitment unless those posts are funded by National Church. That's quite tough, but it's seemed difficult to be recruiting new staff when everyone is feeling under so much pressure. And there is a voluntary redundancy scheme at the moment for church house staff, which is being considered. So, we're looking at some tough stuff, as indeed you are. We're liaising as much as we can with the church commissioners in London, because they're very acutely aware of the pressure that you are under and the impact that will be having right through the ministry around the country. We've been lobbying quite hard to make sure that any support that is coming from the national church, and there will be support coming from the national church, is used sensibly, not just to those who shout the loudest, those who have got themselves into difficult situations, perhaps unwisely, but that money is used for sustainable, sensible projects to get us through this, to come out stronger. We've been lobbying quite hard on that, because it's easy to waste money when there's a crisis, and that would be a shame. We do think there'll be support, but it won't bail us out of the deficit this year. So we will be hitting our reserves. We're trying to look to the future. There's so much uncertainty at the moment. We're trying to get a sense now what 2021 might look like. We deliberately haven't gone out with the parish offer ask, because you don't know, do you? Because there's so much uncertainty. But we're trying to look at different scenarios so that we can set a sensible budget at some point for next year, and indeed for the next few years ahead, to steer us through these difficult times. It was already going to be a tough budget. I think those that came to the pea and pie suppers, we've probably expressed that. This has made it tougher, to be honest. And we will be making difficult decisions about how we spend a smaller amount of income. We're trying to consult already on that. So discussions are taking place with rural deans and lay chairs, just to start asking the questions about, if we have a bit less money next year, or a lot less money next year, how would we respond to that? No decisions are made yet, because we just don't know. But we're starting the conversations about, what might next year look like, and where might we need to prioritise. It is tough times for all of us. We want to try and come out of this as a church stronger, both spiritually but also with a strong financial base, which is why we will talk about parish offer in the months ahead, because it funds what we do. It funds. Oh, it's my timer. I'm out of time. So it funds what we want to do next year, because we want to minister into our communities even more. But that we know the money's tight, which is why I'm going to shut up and let Sophie do the really good stuff, which is trying to give you some tools to use to address stewardship during these difficult times. But I will just say thank you for all you're doing, because we couldn't do any of this without treasurers. You do a fantastic job, and if there are ways we can help you, or you just want to say hello, or rant, or cry, or anything, then we are available. Send us an email or something, give us a ring, and we'll try and support you as best we can. So thank you. I'll hand over to Sophie.
Okay, thanks, Ric. And just to reiterate, before Sophie picks up, it really is a case that we're all in this together, as Ric has just explained. This webinar is meant to be a resource for you as treasurers, to help, to support, to offer advice at this time. And it's a very strange time that we're all in, and it has impacts on us all. Just to reiterate one final point, I know one person's already sent in a question. Please do send in your questions throughout the presentation that you're about to hear, and that can be done via the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of the screen. Simply press on it, type in your question, press send, and we will look to respond to as many questions as we possibly can in the next hour or so. Sophie.
Thanks, Dave. I'm conscious that many of you said this was your first ever webinar, so welcome if that's you. Just to reiterate what Dave was saying, if you can't see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, sometimes you have to move your mouse, and if you move your mouse down towards your screen, then you should see the Q&A option come up. So do feel free to type in there at any point during our presentations. So, like Dave said earlier, I'm going to be doing 2 presentations. My first one is slightly longer and is going to cover 3 parts. So it's a slightly denser section of today, but hopefully you'll keep with me. And I'm going to be looking at 3 things. And the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is the whole idea of, is it actually appropriate for the church to be talking about its own giving needs when we're obviously experiencing a public health crisis? And that's a question that I've been asked a couple of times, and it may well be a question that you've been asked as well. So I'm sure that you all have your own thoughts and views on this, and if we had longer, it would be great to share more on this. But I just wanted to share 3 thoughts in answer to that question. And the first is a kind of biblical thought of why I think it is appropriate for the church to be talking about giving and generosity at this time. And if I've done any work in your churches, you might know that I really like 2 Corinthians 8, where Paul is describing the giving of the Macedonian church. And he says, in the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability. And for me, that's really challenging, because you have the Macedonian church, who Paul says are facing a severe trial, and it's out of that severe trial that wells up this rich generosity. And I think already in the church and in our nation as a whole, we are obviously facing our own severe trial at this time. But I already think that we've seen that kind of generosity beginning to well up. And for me, generosity has its roots in love. Giving should be an outworking of love, otherwise it's misguided. And so my hope is that actually, as the church experiences this trial altogether, that actually we grow in our love for each other, for our communities and our country, and that will equal in an overflowing of generosity in all sorts of different ways. The second thing I wanted to say was more practical. So although for most of you your church buildings will have closed, actually your ministry hasn't stopped. And for most of you, your costs will have not reduced. And so actually we need to be explaining to our congregations that actually ministry is happening to our members and to our local communities, that it's a really important, vital ministry, that it's still something they can be a part of, and actually we need people's commitment to the church now, not just in terms of their money, but in terms of their time as well, that commitment is as important now as it ever was. And finally, I just want to say that our model is Jesus Christ, and obviously self-giving was the hallmark of his ministry, and that applied throughout his ministry. So I think the same applies for us as well. So you might have your own thoughts on that. Feel free to pick them up in the Q&A if you do. But I'm just going to move on to the second part of my presentation now, and that is to think about the challenges that are being faced by local churches across the diocese. And I've been privileged to talk to quite a few treasurers over the last few months, and clergy. And for example, I was talking to a group of churches in the south of the county last week, and they said on average the churches in their deanery have lost 70% of their income during lockdown. And I've also spoken to other clergy this week who said that basically 100% of their income has disappeared during lockdown. So actually, it is a really serious situation. There are some huge challenges there. And the reason the challenges are so severe is because for many of us, many of our churches, the main forms of income are plate giving, envelope giving, fundraisers, tourists visiting our churches and hiring out rooms. And obviously all of that has not been possible during lockdown. And so I'm going to suggest now some ways that we can adapt and react to that situation. And I'm going to ask you all to just bear with me for the course of this webinar, okay? So just keep an open mind for the course of this webinar, because I know that for some people it might not be the kind of the natural solution that they turned to, but just stay with me and hear me out. And if I haven't convinced you by the end of the webinar, then that's fine. And the first thing I want to say is I'm going to talk to you now about online giving and how you as a church can use online giving. And I know many people have said, actually, our congregations don't feel very tech savvy. This isn't something that they're very confident in. And I just want to point out that actually, I think one thing that coronavirus has really taught us is how amazingly adaptable we are and our congregations are. I think the fact that probably over half of you here today said that this was your first ever webinar is testament to actually that adaptability. And I don't know how many of you 2 months ago would have imagined that you'd be participating in a webinar, but probably many of you didn't, and yet here you are, which is fantastic. This is also Ric Jaques' first webinar as well. So you know, we've all had to get used to different ways of working, and we're all getting comfortable with different things. The fact that we can't pay for our groceries in cash very easily anymore, the fact that we might have to buy things on Amazon because shops are closed, or we might do online grocery shopping because actually it's safer than not doing it online. So we are adapting the way we do things, and actually I think that people might well be happy to adapt in these ways as well. So let's get on to the online giving thing. I am going to suggest to you 3 ways that you could take on board online giving in your church. If this is a little bit outside of your comfort zone, I would suggest that you focus on the first option because that is the easiest. But have a look at them, see what you think, and we'll take it from there. As Dave said, do keep typing questions into the Q&A throughout the presentation, and we'll come to them shortly. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you now. Great, so hopefully you can all see my screen now. So the first thing I wanted to show you was this, which is, sorry, we were doing a webinar this morning and I didn't clear this form, which was a mistake. But this is the Carlisle Diocese online giving system. And the good thing about this system is usually if you wanted to do online giving, you as a church would have to set up an account with an online giving provider, which we know is a bit of a barrier for some churches. But with this scheme, the diocese has set up the account with the online giving provider, so you don't have to do that. If you want to use this scheme, all you have to do is email me. So just email sophie.hodge@carlislediocese.org.uk. What I will do is I will produce for you a form that looks like this. So this is a online giving form specifically for your church. And if you do have a website, I can produce a donate button for your church as well. So you will then have a link, a web link that you can give to people and they can go to, and this form will come up for them. They then type in their details, which you'll probably be familiar with from other online things that you've done, and then you click next. So this is this I set up for Bridekirk Church, St Bridget's Bridekirk. You put in the payment type you want, and then you put in the amount. Now, the key thing to know about all of these giving options is there's no upfront costs and there's no monthly costs. So the risk to the parish is very low in terms of the cost. So you put in the amount that you want, and then the donor, so I, would have the option of saying whether I'm happy to cover the transaction fee or not. So the transaction fees are the only costs to this online giving platform. So for this, it's 39p. So if someone was to make a £10 donation to your church, this giving platform, this giving page would take 39p from that donation. But as a donor, I can tick to say that I'm happy to pay that transaction fee, so you as the church get the full £10. And then I can, if I'm eligible, I can claim gift aid as well. So once I've done that, I click next, put in my card details and click donate by card. That information then goes off and the donation is made to Carlisle Diocese. So the money comes to Carlisle Diocese. We then claim gift aid on your behalf, and then once a month we will transfer all the donations to your PCC bank account. So really all you have to do to get this going is to send me an email, and I will send you a web link for this form and a donate button, and you can start using this straight away and collecting donations straight away. There is also with this system the option for regular giving. And the really nice thing about this giving option is actually if someone sets up a regular gift to your church, they have the option to tick a box to say that they're happy to increase their donation by inflation. They don't have to tick it, but that option is available, which is a huge advantage. So that's the easiest option. I'll talk later about how to kind of promote them and use these giving forms, but at the moment I'm just telling you how to set up the giving form, how to get the kind of mechanics in place. So that I would say, if you're looking for the simplest option, that is the best one to go with. However, there will be churches out there who would rather set up an online giving form themselves as a church and not go through the diocese. And if you want to do that, there's lots of giving providers out there, but we recommend give.net or Give a Little. So I'll just show you give.net now. This is a page that's been set up by St Andrews in Penrith. And like the diocesan one, there's no setup fees, there's no monthly fees, it's just the transaction fees. It's a little bit cheaper than the diocesan one, so that was 39p for a £10 donation. This is 30p for a £10 donation. And as you can see, you've got give monthly options, or you've got one-off giving options, like you did with the other one. It is worth saying that for this, you can't give the option for the donor to pay the transaction fee. So the transaction fee of 30p for a £10 donation will come out of your donation. And there isn't the option to increase a monthly gift with inflation. But you have still got the whole monthly giving function there, which is great. I'm also going to show you the Carlisle Diocese page because we've set one up as well. We haven't made ours look so pretty as St Andrews have, but the reason I wanted to show you this page is because here you can see we've got different funds, and this is useful if at your church you have a building campaign or some other project that you're trying to raise money for, and you want to give people the option to give to a specific appeal. You can set that up with give.net and people can make that restricted gift. That's not something that you can do with the diocesan version I showed you before. And just as a kind of a bigger picture point, I think what we're really hoping is that actually one of the advantages of this lockdown time is that we might be able to see a shift in giving patterns in our local churches, because as we've already said, we are hugely reliant on plate and envelope giving, and yet we know if people give by standing order or online regular gifts, they're actually likely to give twice the amount of people who give by plate and envelope. And you also don't have the concern of, do people give if they're not at the church every single week? So if we could use this as a time to encourage people to change their giving practices, then actually we could find ourselves in a more sustainable place as we come out the other side of this. So if you like the look of this option, you can't just email me, you have to set it up yourself. You go to this form and you fill in this form and send it back to Stewardship. They're a great organisation. I've done lots of my own giving and fundraising through them. You can find this form if you go to our Carlisle Diocese website. You might well be familiar with it. On the home page, we have a load of coronavirus guidance resources, and there's a finance and stewardship section. And within those resources, there is the give.net church application form. So that's where you can find the application form, or you could go to give.net website. They've got a section for charities there, and you can find the application form there as well. But it's quite an easy form to fill in. you return it to stewardship.org, and then they actually set up the giving page for you. And once they've set it up, you can then change the pictures and the text if you want to. And of course, you have that link, that web link, that URL that you can share places. But we'll come back to that in the second part of the webinar. And then the final option is something called Give a Little. Give a Little has actually been set up by the National Church. This is their response to try to help churches during coronavirus. And it's an online giving form, just like the other two options. It is actually cheaper, so a £10 donation only has a 20p transaction fee. And like the other options, it collects your gift aid for you. However, there are a couple of disadvantages with this one. The first one is that you don't take regular gifts. So if you want regular gifts, don't use this option. And second of all, they collect gift aid for free, like the other ones do, until the end of this year. But it's actually a special offer. So once you get to 2021, you will have to pay a small amount for them to continue claiming the gift aid for you. Now, if you want to set this up, I know a number of vicars in Carlisle Diocese who've done this in the last couple of weeks, and they told me they found it a very simple process. Because it's Church of England, it's through the parish buying website. Now, you may well have come across parish buying in other contexts. It's basically giving really good deals to churches on all sorts of products. So the first thing to do is, if you've never used parish buying before, is to go to www.parishbuying.org.uk and then click register, and you have to register with the website. Once you've registered, you can go to their online giving section. And this is a page that gives you step-by-step instructions as to how to fill out your Give a Little, how to set up your Give a Little page. So the instructions are very simple, but also the National Church have created these little videos so that if you get a bit stuck, you can click play and they will actually talk you through step by step and show you step by step how to set this up, which is really useful. And as I say, the people I've spoken to who have set this up said it was a quick and easy process. There's 2 stages. You have to sign up with SumUp, who deal with the money side of things, and then you have to set up your giving page. And once it's set up, this is Scotby Church in the north of the diocese. This is what it looks like. And like Give.net, you do have the option to have your different funds if you've got a building fund or something like that. So those are the 3 options for setting up your online giving page. I will be talking about how to use and promote that in the next section. But yeah, if you want something really simple, I suggest this one. Just email me and I'll set this up for you and send it over. If you want one that you can do a bit more with, then maybe you want to consider setting up Give.net or Give a Little yourself. But I'll stop talking now and see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Sophie. A lot of information to take on board there, some fantastic resources which are available, and it's something that I've seen through within my sphere of communications, that a positive that has come out of a horrible situation that we find ourselves in through COVID is the extra support and advice that's being made available, and stewardship and giving, what we've just heard there reflects that as well. I'm delighted to say we've had lots of questions in already. I'm going to pick up on a few just broad ones first off, if I may, which if I can direct to Ric. Ric, you mentioned in your short presentation about external a freeze on external recruitment. We have an anonymous question, but one that asks, does the policy renew appointments also refer to priest in charge rector appointments? Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And funnily enough, this was raised in the clergy section as well at the webinar an hour ago. Yes, it does. It was a debated at Bishop's Council and Bishop's leadership team, because it's obviously a really sensitive issue. I think the overriding concern was that when so many people in the church and in the economy in general are, to be honest, fearful for their livelihoods and their jobs. To be out there recruiting for posts during this time of uncertainty will be difficult, and it sent out some tricky messaging. So the very difficult decision was taken for now, just to put a pause on external recruitment apart from those posts which are funded by the National Church. Now that will be constantly kept under review, and obviously if you're sitting there with a vacancy, that's really tricky, isn't it? But until we get a little bit more certainty, that is the view being held by the Bishops' Council.
Thanks, Ric. And again, it just reflects the difficult and uncertain situation we find ourselves in at the moment. A question again for Ric from David Last, and that is, how many parishes in the diocese have already paid part or all of their offer? Do we have any idea?
Without diving into spreadsheets, I can't give you a precise number, but a large proportion, I haven't run it from yet, a large proportion of parishes are currently up to date with their parish offer. Most give their parish offer by standing order or by regular monthly or quarterly payments, and most PTCs are managing to keep going at the moment, which is great. A few have paid the whole year in advance, which is extra great. And we've heard from probably 35 treasurers indicating where they're at, some confirming, yes, we're okay for this year, some saying we're not okay. But we're about £100,000 down so far on what we would normally have expected to receive. So, the pressure is building for you, and that's showing in the parish offer. So far, so good, but the longer our churches stay closed, we're expecting you to struggle more. So that's the current view, and we're watching it very closely, obviously, and we'll try and feed that back into the so everyone knows what's happening as well. If you are able to keep giving, please do. If you're struggling, please contact us so we know. That's my main message.
An associated question from Kevin Cook around parish offer, and Kevin asks, can you give some idea as to when the information regarding the costings for the 2021 parish offer will be sent to churches? And secondly, what will be the likely deadline for PCCs to respond with their offers?
Great question, Kevin, because it's normally you'd had the letters by now, wouldn't you? We have paused it because of the uncertainty, and we don't yet have a date in mind because particularly while churches remain closed for worship, we don't know when you're going to be in a position to give a sensible answer for next year. We will come out to you, and we'll probably speak to some treasurers before we make a decision, just to get a sense of whether you can make a decent guess, which is probably what it's going to be, because a normal deadline is early September, isn't it? And by early September, I don't think you're going to know. And you'll probably just tell us that you don't know. That said, we still need to try and make some plans for next year. So over the next month or two, we'll come out to you and tell you what that timetable will be. And we'll also acknowledge the fact that it's going to be really tricky for you, because until we know what normal is, and that's probably not going to be until into next year, is it? That's going to be a really difficult call. So the figures you give when you do give them, and we'll try and give you lots of time as well, because again, meeting as PCCs isn't easy, is it? Try and give you time to think that through, and then accept, and know that your responses are best guess. So we'll try and keep in touch with that, but probably I don't think we'll be asking probably for at least 2 months even to ask the question, is my guess.
Thanks, Ric. And finally, the last question, which probably is directed towards you. This comes from Tony, who asks, have we any idea or indication what grants may be available to help churches with loss of income? Any details of grant providers?
I've not come across any new funding to help get us through this. We hope as a diocese we'll get some money which will help offset, if you like, the money that you might not be able to give us through parish offer. I'm not aware of any funds that are there yet for parishes that are struggling. There's a lot of lobbying to National Church to try and make funding available, as I'm sure you would imagine, and we're part of that lobbying. If we do find out, we will communicate that. But sorry.
just to pick up on that, I've been dealing with a missive to clergy on behalf of Bishop James, and we're including a link to Ecclesiastical, who've put out a new financial resource hub, and that does include a list of grant provision that may be available, but I have a feeling that that's ring-fenced as well. But we can look to include that on the stewardship and finance pages as soon as possible. Turning to other matters, one from Robert Cass, who asks, when the churches reopen, any advice for handling cash from the collection plate to the bank? Many, if not most, of our people involved in these activities prior to lockdown are classified as clinically vulnerable due to age. Sophie, is that something that you can pick up on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and obviously it kind of picks up on the idea I was talking about before, that we've been forced to change the way we do so many things. And you know, it's amazing now that you can't go to Tesco's and pay for your shopping with cash, but actually that's their way of trying to protect their employees. So I mean, I think that the technical answer to your question is the National Church are going to be helping by producing lots and lots of risk assessments and guidance for churches as they start to reopen, and I'm positive that handling cash will be one of the things that they pick up on in their risk assessment. So I would, as you start to plan reopening, I would really take notice of the stuff coming from the National Church, look at their risk assessments, look at their guidance, and use that as a basis for putting things in place. But I would also say, this is just a personal view, but as we come out of lockdown, I think there's going to be a lot more onus on the individual to start to work out what they're comfortable with and what personal levels of risk that they can take given their own personal situations. And so I think as a church, we need to be really, really sensitive to that, and not put people in positions that they don't feel comfortable, particularly our treasurers. So I think, you know, I do encourage you all as PCCs to have really open, honest conversations about what do you feel comfortable doing, and to feed that into your policies and risk assessments. And I'm sure that there'll be, you know, hand sanitizers and all of that sort of thing put in place, but you do still have to make sure that your volunteers are feeling comfortable with what they're being asked to do. And really, for me, it just gives yet more fuel to the idea that we should be looking at other ways of enabling giving at this time, and not just relying on what we've done before, but actually seeing whether online giving can supplement and help that, because obviously it gets around a lot of the challenges.
Thanks, Sophie. To pick up off the back of that, Peter Boyles has sent through a question where he talks about the mission community he's a part of broadcast lots of YouTube services which get lots of hits. Do we have any experience of churches obtaining donations through this online presence? It kind of alludes to what you've just been talking about for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say too much on that now, actually, because I think that feeds in quite a lot to what I'm going to say in the second half of the presentation. But yes, certainly nationally, there are lots of churches who have been very successful at using these online giving forms in their church services, whether it's putting a link or something else to actually get giving through their online service. And I was talking to one church, actually, which was only a small church where I used to worship down south, and the first time they did it, they got over £200, which they were really encouraged about the first time they promoted giving in an online service. So yeah, there definitely is, and I'll be talking more about how to do that in the next section.
Okay, just to pick up further on your earlier presentation, Sophie, a question from Winifred Steele, who asks about the single payment charge that the providers asked us to give. Winifred asks, is the single payment charge per gift or for every time if it was a monthly gift, if you understand? So if it was a recurring gift.
Yeah, if it was a recurring gift, you would have to pay that transaction fee every month. So if it was the diocesan one, that would be 39p coming out of a £10 donation every time, every month it was made. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of questions from in fact, we'll pick up on this one from Martin Rayner. Thanks, Martin, for this, who talks about the importance of, for want of a better description, passing trade through tourism. Obviously, when we do get back to the point where tourists are coming back to the Lake District, and we pray that is soon and safe. How can we take donations from visitors passing the church? We're right in the middle of a tourist resort, and we want to take advantage of our visitors' generosity. I'm thinking of QR codes, payments on phones, etc. Now, if I remember rightly, I think this is something that's been trialled about this previously, hasn't it?
Yeah. To be honest, I think we found that the mobile phone giving wasn't the most effective, because the thing is people are used to payments being so instant now, and the mobile phone trial we did needed people to fill in a lot of details on their phones, which wasn't really practical. But where we have seen churches have real success from tourist giving is in the contactless giving. So we've got a growing number of churches in Carlisle Diocese who've now got contactless giving working in their church, and that's brilliant because everyone's so familiar with it. It's just like if you go to the supermarket and do the contactless giving on the till at the supermarket, you can have that set up in your church. The lessons that we've learned from the digital trial that Dave referred to and the churches that have just taken on contactless giving is that good signage is really important. So to have a nice, simple, catchy sign that tells people that the contactless giving is there and support us. But yeah, churches are seeing real success in that, and it's not expensive. Even if you don't have Wi-Fi, as long as you've got mobile phone signal, it's very easy to put in place. And the National Church are planning a big push on this in October. Their hope is to actually get half of the parishes in the country using contactless giving, and they'll be giving us all sorts of kit and training to get out to you as local church to enable that to happen. So I would seriously consider contactless giving, and I would keep your eyes out for October. That timeline might shift slightly because of coronavirus, but that's the aim at the moment.
Okay, I know I'm conscious that we were down for 10 minutes on this, but there are quite a few questions coming through that I think are really valuable to take time to answer here, as long as everybody's happy to stay on maybe a tad longer. This from a correspondent who asks, I was planning on providing bank details for Tolkien Church in a letter addressed to individuals who've been giving regularly at church services in the past. Have you any comments on this approach?
Yeah, great thing to do, definitely. And again, I will be touching on this a little bit in the next section, but I think your approach is completely right. The thing I would say is that when it comes to write that letter, it's just good to include as many different ways of giving as possible. So I completely recognise that not everyone is going to want to do the online giving that I'm talking about now, but for some people that will be the simplest way. Maybe they haven't got online banking set up or whatever. So actually you could include a link to your online giving page, include your bank details for setting up standing orders. If you're accepting cheques, include how people can donate via cheque. Think through the ways that people can donate to your church and try and include all of them in that letter, just so you're making it as easy for people as possible. But definitely a great thing to do.
Okay, that's great. One from Rose Lewis. Thank you, Rose. And this goes back to the three options about online giving that you referenced, Sophie. Is it possible to do both option 1 and 3 for people who may just do one-off sometimes?
I mean, I'm keen to keep it as simple as possible for you as treasurers. So the good thing about the diocesan version, the first one I showed you, is that can do one-off gifts or regular gifts. So you don't have to go to the bother of setting up option 3 if you want to give people the option of doing one-off gifts and regular gifts. So the easiest thing would just be emailing me, and I would send that over to you, the one-off version and the regular version. If you are wanting to give people the option of donating to a specific building fund or some other project, and that's really important to you, that would be a reason to then look at option 3. because you just can't do that with the diocesan one. But I would try and make your life simple and just pick the one that works best for your context.
On a similar theme, Sophie, this from Margaret Irving, do the transaction fees that we've already touched on for online giving increase pro rata with the size of the donations, or are they a standard, just a regular?
That's a good question. They are actually a percentage. So that was a worked example, and the reason I did it like that is because they actually all work it out in slightly different ways. So some take a certain percentage from the gift and then a different percentage from the gift aid, or they have a slightly different formula for each of them. But so I gave the £10 example just to give you an idea. But if you go on the Parish Resources website, which I will show you later on, they actually have a really helpful PDF which lists all of the giving providers. There's more than the ones I've told you about today, and gives you a really detailed breakdown of how they work out their costs. So if you want to see that breakdown in more detail, do go onto the Parish Resources website and find that comparison document for all the giving providers. I'll show you how to get there later on.
Thanks, Sophie. Just drawing to a close with a couple more questions. One from Anne Burgess about contactless. Does contactless giving have to be set up by your bank?
So you set up an account in a similar way to what you do for give.net and Give a Little. So because obviously there is money being transferred, there is a kind of verification process, and I can't remember exactly what it is for the contactless giving, but it is similar to the online one. So for example, if you set up a give.net account and you fill in that form I showed you, they ask you to send some void bank stationery with the application form to prove that you own that bank account. So they have their own kind of verification process, because it is obviously dealing with money, and they need to make sure that the PCC bank account that the money is going into is legitimately your bank account. So there is a kind of a verification process, which is a little bit like setting up a bank account, but not as long-winded.
Okay, a couple of questions for Rick, if at all possible. And these come from Cyril Wilson, so I'll bring them all together. Firstly, are the 2019 diocesan accounts finalised and available online? And also, with Church House having furloughed staff, as you talked about, that's around about 50% of our staff are furloughed at this time. Can we expect to see a revised or reduced parish offer for this year as Church House overheads have reduced?
Okay. Question one, are the diocesan accounts ready and available? Answer, no, unfortunately, because coronavirus struck just before our audit started. We also are not having a functional synod stroke AGM in June as we normally would. I wouldn't hold your breath, because we're flat out on coping with everything that's going on. We will get there in the end. We're going to have to work out how the audit will happen remotely, etc., over the next couple of months. So no, I'm afraid they're not. They will be eventually. As a point, the Companies House and Charity Commission are offering extensions on the filing of accounts this year for those who are struggling. So if you are involved in companies or registered charities with a charity number, and you have to file those on the Charity Commission website, extensions are available. I don't want to use them for the diocese, but they are there if need be. In terms of the parish offer, the parish offer scheme basically is that you offer and give what you can. We're trying to cut our overheads because we know that our income is going to be cut, our investment income, our rental income, our donation income, and we know or expect very strongly that our parish offer income will be less this year. So we're cutting costs in anticipation of that. Message from us is still give what you can, because that goes to fund your local ministry. Every penny of parish offer funds your clergy, your network youth activity. We're trying to cut our cloth accordingly, because we know that our money will be down. We're not going to tell you to pay 10% less parish offer, because some of you can pay it in full and others may pay 30% less. So it's really each treasurer and PCC needs to look at their own financial situation and plan and react accordingly as best they can. but being good stewards of what they've got, and you can't run out of cash. So each PCC needs to look at its own position, give what you can, because that's funding the clergy and the network youth, and all of us just be very mindful of what we're spending our money on as we are in Church House.
That's great, thanks, Rick. There are more questions, but I'm just conscious of the time, and I'm conscious that we need to move on with Sophie's second presentation, and there's further Q&A as well. So Sophie, over to you.
Brilliant. Well, I'm really chuffed that there are so many questions, so thank you for engaging. So what I want to do now is just move away from the mechanics. So you've got your giving form, whichever option you've decided to go for. Unfortunately, you're only halfway there. And what I don't want to happen is for people to enthusiastically set these up or email me today and then be disappointed in a couple of months' time because actually they haven't got any donations through on their online giving page. And really, the thing to remember is that these things don't magically collect donations, and actually they will just sit there and gather dust if we don't promote them. So how on earth do you promote them? Actually, the principles, I think, to promoting online giving during lockdown are very, very similar to the stewardship principles we would use if the church was still meeting as normal. So if I've worked with your church in the past, you'll know that, for example, I encourage churches to do an annual review of giving where they write to churches and just to their members and just prompt them on the whole giving thing, and then once every 3 years to do a more in-depth look at stewardship. The same sorts of ideas apply now. So I'd really encourage you to write to your members, and it's great to hear that someone else is already doing that at the moment. We do have, if I screen share again, we do have on our diocesan website, I've mentioned this a few times, this is our homepage. We've got the coronavirus latest guidance. We've got the finance and stewardship section there. We do have here a template letter for vicars to send to church members. So you're welcome to use that as a basis, or you're welcome to write your own, whatever you prefer. But actually do get in touch with your church members, because they need to know that the church ministry is still happening. Linked to the question we had before, our parish offer is paying for our local ministry. It's our vicars, it's not actually paying for Church House, and actually they are on the ground doing amazing work at this time, but also our ministry is going to continue after coronavirus. So you need to make that case in the letter, and then, like I said before, just set out to people as simply and clearly as possible, these are the different ways that you can give, so we're making it easy. So do write to people. I know it's old-fashioned, and I know it's what I've been saying before lockdown, but I think it's a really great place to start. The next thing that I would encourage you to do is to share the link to your giving page as widely as you can. So think about where you can send your link. And we had that question earlier about online giving services. Definitely, every online giving service you do, have a short moment where you actually say to people, the church is still happening, we still really need your support. If you want to make a gift today, this is how you do it, and then put your web link up there. If you use social media, put the web link there. If you have an email newsletter going out, put it in your email newsletter. You can even put it on printed literature, although I do accept the URL is sometimes a bit long for that. But do get that URL, that web link, out on as many different places as possible in your services, in your emails, on your social media. But it's not just a case of plonking a web link somewhere. And when I talk to churches, usually in the normal world, which seems so long ago now, we talk about things like setting the the ask for giving in the context of discipleship, and so that's why it's really important to have your vicars and your clergy on board, because you're giving people a reason to give. So you're not just putting a link up there, but you're trying to express why it's good to give. So it's part of our discipleship journey, or you're talking about the needs of your church. So if there are specific financial needs for your church, tell people about them, and tell people about the exciting things that your church is doing. What is your mission and ministry to your community now during coronavirus, and as we come out of this stage as well, because actually we really want to inspire people to give. So you've got your web link, you've got your URL, which you need to share widely, but then you do also need to just give a little bit of narrative to it, to help people think, actually, yeah, that is something that I'd really like to do. So those are the two things that I would really encourage everyone to do. And if this is a little bit outside of your comfort zone, if you just do those two things, you'll have done a brilliant job, and you don't need to do any more. If you're feeling a little bit more confident, there are a couple of other resources that I will quickly signpost you to. These have come again from the National Church, who are trying to really help local church at this time. And you can find them by going to the Parish Resources website. So I hope that you've heard of Parish Resources. It's a really, really useful library of information, particularly useful for treasurers. And at the moment, on the top of their Parish Resources website, parishresources.org.uk, you can see they've got for ideas and advice on how to encourage giving, please click here. And if you click there, it takes you to this page. And on this page, they have a 40-second video, and this video is great because it actually makes the ask and makes the case for church giving for you. So do have a listen to it. And the idea is that video can be inserted into your online giving service. So if you're doing an online giving service most weeks, then do use this video and slot it into your service. And they ask for giving really sensitively and effectively, and you don't have to then, they do it for you, which is quite nice. The other thing that's quite clever about this resource that the National Church has put together is you can edit this video using a church near you. So if you're on the Parish Resources website, you go to this link here, which is just below the video generator on a church near you website. You have to have the login details for a church near you, so talk to the person in your church who has those, and it will take you to this page, and here you can just edit the final screen that appears on that film. So they'll show you the 39-second film, and then at the end they'll put this purple screen up, and you can edit this, so you can change it to your own church name. So let's say this is St. Bridget's, or let's say it's St. Andrew's. You can then get your URL and put that in there. So then you've got your specific giving page details there, and then you click download your video, that button there, and that will turn into a file which you can then insert into your online service, or you can put on your social media. So yeah, if you're doing a lot of online stuff, that's quite a useful tool. The final thing you can do, and again, don't worry about this if it's slightly outside of your comfort zone, but if you're feeling a bit more confident, church near you have also enabled you to have on your church profile a giving option. So someone from the diocese in the previous webinar told me that they'd just set this up on their church, but I can't remember what church it is, so I'm afraid I'm at Southwark Diocese. But this is Holy Spirit Church in Clapham, which is very near where my sister worships, actually. And if you go to the homepage of their church, on a church near you, they've enabled this giving option here, so people can, from their profile, click there, and it takes you through to any of the giving pages that you've set up. So Clapham Church, Holy Spirit Clapham, they've obviously set up a page with Give a Little, so it's taken you through to their Give a Little page. But if you'd set up a page with give.net or with the diocese, it would take you through to that page instead. And the way you do that is by following the instructions here. So on the Parish Resources website, they've got really clear instructions for you, and essentially you're logging into your Church Near You profile. You're clicking edit your home page, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you've got a take online donations click box, and all you do is put the web link for your giving platform into there, and then click save at the bottom. And then that will appear as it does for the Clapham Church, if that makes sense. But all of the instructions are on the Parish Resources website. So I think I'll stop talking now and see if we have lots more questions. But if you're not feeling confident with the video and with the church near you, the key thing is to write to your church members and to share that link as widely as you can with just a short narrative explaining the need, explaining your vision, and inspiring people to give to you.
That's brilliant, Sophie, thanks. To start off with brownie points, and those brownie points apparently go to St John's Wabberthwaite. Catherine Windsor has just been in contact to say that they have set this up, and by this up I presume they mean the ACNY links, so that's fantastic. A couple more questions to throw, Sophie, to throw your way, and this from Charlotte Bampton, and it's about gift aid. So just to check my understanding, if your church is mostly made up of people who are not eligible for gift aiding for whatever reason, and who mostly give by envelope or plate, where we can claim GAA-SDS at present, if they switch to an online one-offer regular donation, we would not be able to claim GAA-SDS on those gifts.
Yes, that is correct. So for anyone who's not familiar, there's a gift aid small donation scheme, which means that for any anonymous donations under £30, you can claim gift aid through the small donation scheme. Now that applies to cash donations. It also applies to contactless donations. So if you get the contactless giving set up, you can claim GADS on that, but you can't claim GADS on the online giving. So that is something to consider. The thing I would say is that on average people are not going to church every week, so that it's much more normal for people to be going to church every other week or once every 3 weeks, whereas obviously the regular gift isn't dependent on people's attendance of church. So there's something to be weighed up there. I would still say most of the time it's more valuable to get people onto the regular online giving, but you do need to be aware that you wouldn't be able to claim GADS on them.
Great. And just a quick comment from Joyce Keatley. Hiya, Joyce, who asks, how much of this information has been shared with clergy? Well, all of this information has been shared with clergy in a previous webinar which took place at 1:30 today, and we're recording this session as we recorded the previous session. Both sessions will be uploaded to the Diocesan YouTube channel, will be shared extensively, and we'll continue to share the information that you've been party to today as widely as possible. So hopefully that helps. Joyce, one from Steve Ward, who asks, Sophie, does Sophie think it's practical in give.net to use the appeals function to allow the donor to choose from 5 churches in a parish?
The challenge with that is that when you set up a give.net account, you're setting it up with a specific bank account. So all of the money from that give.net page, regardless of the fund, will all go into the same bank account. But what you will get as a PCC is a report which will say, you know, we had £50 for this fund, we had £60 for this fund, we had £20 for that fund. So I guess one option would be that you set the account up with the PCC, and then that PCC was responsible for transferring the amount of donations to the other churches. But the actual page is just set up to one bank account, so all of the money will go to one PCC bank account. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
I think I follow. A question from Jane and Andrew Holland. Very simple. Is there an easy way to stop a regular online gift?
Yeah, so so if you set up a regular gift, you actually set up an account with give.net, say, and so if you're doing a one-off donation, you don't have to set up an account. If you're doing a regular donation, you do. So you can just sign into the account and cancel it via the account, or if you do online banking, obviously you'd have an amount coming out on your online banking from give.net or whoever it was, and you could cancel the donation at that point as well. So there'd be two ways that you can cancel that donation.
Great. A couple more further brownie points this time for Sophie. This from Cyril Wilson, not really a question, but thanks to Sophie's help, we found setting up Give a Little easy and linked onto two church websites, as well as Yorkshire and Cornwall via family. So obviously it works well. That's good to hear. Just rolling through some of the further questions. Turning the clock back a little from this person, can we post church members a standing order form? And do you know if the banks are still accepting these?
Yes. Yes and yes, I think is the answer, unless Sophie wants to come to. A standing order is still a valid way of, you know, and you can still do it by posting a standing order form to your branch, if there will be a branch, a postal address that is your branch, and as long as you sign a letter or a form with the correct details on it, signed in accordance with your bank signature, then yes, that still is fine.
Thanks, Rick. A quick question from Tony, and this is about APCMs, who asks, any update on holding APCMs to approve accounts, etc., so that charity commissioners can be updated? I know, Rick, you may want to come in here, but I know that I was involved with circulation of something that's called a bishop's instrument back in March when COVID first kicked off, to say APCMs and vestry meetings had been delayed beyond the 31st of May until the 31st of October of this year, and I think that that's still the same.
I've certainly not heard anything different to that, and I think you know, things, whilst face-to-face meetings remain, you know, not appropriate, I think that will just have to be, you know, continue to be until such times as it's sensible to do so. And I think that's part of the you know, there's been some advice around, you can file your figures onto the national financial returns on the National Church Statistics Unit, for example, without them going through that meeting. And I think that's also probably linked in with the, you know, extension with the Charity Commission filing, etc. I think that's a case of watch this space, but until such times as people can meet, you know, that's the right thing to do.
Okay, and finally, one from John, who asks, hi Sophie, was I not listening carefully enough? But why can't people simply be invited to donate directly to our PCC account?
I mean, absolutely, they still can. And I think the key thing is giving people as many options as they can. I think the online giving forms are great if you're going to, definitely to your church members, particularly for regular gifts, but also to a wider audience. But if you're writing to your church members, I would definitely say to give that as an option, for sure. So yeah, no, don't do away with that option. But this is great for people who maybe don't want to do online banking, or if you want to share details more widely via social media or on an online service or things like that. This might be a kind of a more secure way to do that. So yeah, it's definitely, we're definitely not saying this is the only way to do giving. We want to give people as many options as they can. So do keep doing that.
That's great. Well, we've gone a little bit over time by 10 minutes or so, but hopefully people have found it of value and of use. We can't thank you enough for taking the time out to join us today, and the level of engagement and questioning has been fantastic. This is a resource for you. It's an opportunity for the guys here to help you as much as possible. We hope that you found it of use. Just to reiterate that this will be posted, the recording of this will be posted onto the YouTube channel and will be shared as widely as possible. And please encourage other people within your PCC, even though they're not treasurers, to view it, because we're all in this together to get through this time. So I just want to end by saying thank you so much. Go well, and God bless you all. Thank you.